What's up, everybody? It's Jordan, and welcome to the Sports Dude Hine Show. Today is February 9th, 2022. It is Super Bowl week. Today is Wednesday. The Super Bowl is just in a couple of days away. And joining me for today's video is Blake Jude. How you doing today, Blake?
Doing fantastic. The Bengals in the Super Bowl. I'm a very, very happy Bengals fan right now.
It does not seem real. It feels like you're in a dream. Somebody's supposed to wake you up type of deal. Too good to be true. So in this video, with the NFL awards tomorrow night on Thursday at 8, we're kind of going to talk about, our picks for some of these NFL awards, previewing the Super Bowl a little bit, between the Bengals and the Rams. And also, there's some very interesting words coming from Rob Gronkowski, a future Hall of Famer who, has been with the Buccaneers and the Patriots, who has won many, many Super Bowls. And he said if he would play in the NFL, he would like to play with Joe Burrow if he continues to play in the NFL. But we'll go ahead and start, talking about the awards here with Offensive Rookie of the Year. I have a feeling, it's pretty obvious who it is, but can you kind of basically make a case for why Jamar Chase would win Offensive Rookie of the Year?
Yeah, Jamar Chase has been, I think, far and away a top 5 receiver in the NFL this year. What he has done just this entire season has been unprecedented. I don't think anyone really expected it, and is insane just to kind of imagine how much he has already performed this year. This is a guy that has already broken AJ Green's career single season high in reception yards just in one season in the NFL, which is insane to even imagine since we all consider AJ Green to be one of the best receivers in Bengals history. Chase has already broken his record in a single season reception record. It's impressive, and he deserves a lot of credit for it, and he's been fantastic. So he's definitely my pick to win this award. But I will say there are guys out there who I know this has always been a quarterback award in the past. Mac Jones had a very solid season with the Patriots. I know that they might consider his way. I actually think Mac Jones there for a little bit during the season was considered the favorite for this award for a while. I thought he had an argument. And also, I really wanted to give credit to guys like Creed Humphrey and Rashawn Slater, who are fantastic at their position this year, both center and offensive tackle. I would argue both those guys are already looking to be top 5 at their position as well. It's just a matter of fact that Chase is on such a valuable position. He just exploded and had so many yards this season. He was such a big part of every defense's game plan and still managed to have insane games where he caught for over 100 to 200 yards a game. That game against the Chiefs, if anyone during the regular season saw that game against the Chiefs where he dropped 60 something yards against the Kansas City Chiefs, I think that really sold everyone that he was a far and away the best wide receiver in this class, the best offensive rookie in this class, one of the best receivers in the NFL, and he is very deserving of this award.
And when you talk about that Kansas City game, that was easily, I would say, at that time, one of the final games of the regular season, I would feel like that was probably our biggest game since the playoff game against Pittsburgh. And Jamar Chase went off, and I think it was 266. He had more receiving yards that game than Patrick Mahomes had passing yards, and that just shows how terrific of a season Jamar Chase has had. And it's weird because I'm not just going to be biased. Obviously Chase is Rookie of the Year, but when you start thinking about it, it's crazy. I know we're talking about offense, but for Rookie of the Year, Evan McPherson, it's crazy. A guy who's a special teamer. He's been one of the best rookies this season as well. And it's so crazy that Chase has been so phenomenal. He's had a better year than Green ever had. And I saw a tweet the other day, is Jamar Chase right now better than any year of AJ Green? Which is weird because when you first would think, well, probably not, because Green was one of our best players of all time. But when you start thinking about it, I think it's a little bit closer than people think. And it's mind-blowing because in April, some people wanted Chase, some people wanted Sewell. Some people hated the Chase pick, and now looking back, if it wasn't for Chase, we wouldn't even be in the playoffs. And it's just so crazy to think. Last year we kind of thought Burrow was going to be Offensive Rookie of the Year. That didn't happen, unfortunately, due to his season-ending injury. But now Chase basically makes up for it by him far and away going to be Offensive Rookie of the Year, winning the award tomorrow.
I don't think there was ever really a season where we considered AJ Green to be flat out the best receiver in the league. Based off of what I've seen from Jamar Chase this year and based off of what I think he could be in the future, I mean, this is a very young receiver still. Keep in mind, this is a guy that would still only be a senior in college right now. He is still really young as a football player. This is a guy that's going to be the best receiver in the league 1 year. He's going to have a year where he is considered the best receiver in the NFL. And that is really, really exciting for a Bengals fan to have. I mean, I really do think that we haven't really had that. I don't think ever. I think Chad Johnson was really close. He had a couple of really good years there where he was right up there at the top. AJ Green was really close to the top, but I always think he was a little bit outranked by Julio Jones throughout his career. I genuinely think there's going to be a year out there Jamar Chase is the best receiver in the NFL, and he's going to separate himself from guys like that. So, and just seeing what he's done this rookie year, I mean, this is a guy that is already separating himself from the likes of, Mike Evans and other terrific receivers out there who he's already showing that he's clearly better than just his rookie season. Even with problems, he still has drops occasionally throughout games. He still has moments where he is the best. He makes mistakes. He doesn't do what he needs to be done. But this is a guy that can win off the line of scrimmage with ease. I mean, his physicality, the ability to create separation off the line of scrimmage and at the catch point is second to none at this point. And for a guy that's only 6 foot tall, he's got elite speed. He's got a very, very good vertical. He is super strong. I mean, he's got everything you want in a receiver to be able to create separation, catch the ball if it's contested, be able to get down the field at a high level with yards after catch, running the correct routes. He's got it all. He is going to be an elite receiver for a long time.
And you mentioned the drops. That was a big issue, heading into the regular season because, preseason, that was an issue. But even throughout the regular season, I feel like Jamar Chase's drops, at times they have been a little bit of an issue, but I think they've been blown out of proportion because when you look at it, Tyreek Hill has more drops than Jamar Chase. That's not talked about because Tyreek Hill's speed makes up for it, and he's been a top 5 receiver for several years now. And, with the age of Jamar Chase and, Burrow only his second year with the Bengals, T. Higgins second year with the Bengals, I mean, we have so many young players that could really help us in the future that, I mean, we are in a Super Bowl this year. Nobody expected this to happen, but I don't really, think there's nothing stopping us from, being in contention possibly, next year and the year after. Because, I mean, I'm older than Jamar Chase. That just sounds weird to say. And it's crazy. It really shows, I mean, if he's, 21 years old and he's already a top 5 receiver, not trying to be biased, but when you watch the film and you watch him play, he has been sensational. And, that's something that could really end up helping, Cincy, this Sunday against, LA and for the future. It's so weird because, some of these other rookies, you kind of mentioned Slater and, Penei Sewell, lots of people wanted Sewell, but he's been fantastic as well. Defensive rookie of the year. It's weird because when you look at Jamar Chase, I would say he's a clear favorite for offensive rookie of the year, and defensive rookie of the year, I would say pretty much is the same way. I think heading into the year, my defensive rookie of the year pick was Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah from the Browns. That was a horrible pick looking back. Micah Parsons has been absolutely sensational. And coming out of the draft, everybody said he's the best linebacker prospect in a long, long time. And, I mean, he has lived up to the hype and everything. Without a doubt, been the best defensive rookie on defense this year. Going to win Defensive Rookie of the Year tomorrow. I mean, it's one of those deals like, when you're on a top market team like the Cowboys, obviously you're going to get talked about a ton, even if you're like a average player. But with Micah Parsons, even if he was on one of these smaller market teams, people will be talking about him so much just because he is all over the field. He can, get an interception and coverage occasionally. He can get some sacks, tackle for loss. He basically does it all. And even though, Jamar Chase is clear front runner for offensive rookie of the year, it's pretty much the same case for Micah Parsons when it comes to that defensive rookie of the year.
Yeah, it's a runaway for him. I'm not entirely sure what I picked here. I want to say I picked Azeez Ojulari, which is, again, not a very good pick. But I think without question, after what Micah Parsons has done this year, he is very deserving of the award. I don't think I've ever seen a linebacker come into his first season and be as versatile and dangerous across pretty much any part of the defense as Micah Parsons. This is a guy that can drop back in the secondary and cover at an elite level, also come in as a defensive lineman and get sacks at a very, very high level as well. He had 11 sacks this season for a linebacker. And on top of that, he can play the middle linebacker perfectly. He knows how to play the run. Like I said, he can cover, and he's very, very good at sniffing out the flats. Very good range. He can get across the field, tackle. He is one of the best tacklers on the team. This is a guy that can literally do it all as a linebacker, and it is very, very exciting for Cowboys fans to have a guy like this because they've had times where linebackers have struggled big time. They had a Leighton Vander Esch guy drafted a couple years ago in the first round that has never really panned out the way they were hoping for. They have a lot of guys out there, Jalen Smith, who just did not work out. They ended up cutting him later on this season and didn't work out with him. They were in big need of finding a linebacker that they can rely on to cover this entire, to help with this entire front seven that was just really, really struggling. And Micah Parsons has now single-handedly become the biggest weapon on defense that they have in the front seven, outside of Trayvon Diggs, of course, who is a very dangerous weapon in the secondary. I do really think that Micah Parsons and his pressure has been a big force in causing a lot of turnovers, causing a lot of pressure. He has been a drive staller himself, and he is very deserving of the sword as well.
No, absolutely. When you look at a guy like Vander Esch and even Jalen Smith, both those guys being, top picks, the years they came out, and both those guys really, they've been good at times, but if you're a Cowboys fan, you've always wanted for them to take that next step, and that's never really worked. And that was a big reason why I took Micah Parsons. And Micah Parsons' first season as a Cowboy, his rookie year, has been better than any of Jalen Smith's years, and better than any year of Vander Esch. They wanted that next step from those guys. They couldn't get it, so they draft Micah Parsons, and he's clearly, already better and more advanced than both those guys. And it's crazy because, Vander Esch and Jalen Smith both had potential, but never really lived up to it. And Micah Parsons, he's already living up to the hype in just his rookie season. Definitely going to be one of the best linebackers for years to come. He's already playing like a top 5 linebacker this season. And, when you talk about offensive rookie of the year, defensive rookie of the year, now going to, coach of the year. I really don't think this is much of a discussion, much of a debate, really. So who would you say your coach of the year is?
I really thought, and I said it myself, I said this divisional round between the Bengals and the Titans was going to decide who was the coach of the year in this case. It was going to be Mike Vrabel and what he did with the Titans, or is it Zach Taylor and his turnaround with the Bengals? I don't think I've ever seen someone turn around as quickly as they have a team as Zach Taylor has done from last season to this season. This is a team that went from 4-11-1 to now a Super Bowl contending team. This is a team that is in the Super Bowl right now with one of the youngest teams in the NFL. I believe it's the 5th or 6th youngest right now in the NFL. A team that just had a quarterback come off of a brutal knee injury. A team that is still one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. Came off of having one of the worst defenses in the NFL. I don't think anyone predicted the Bengals to finish anywhere better than 3rd in their conference or in their division at best. This was a team that had absolutely no expectations heading into this season, and Zach Taylor turned those expectations and flipped them on their heads, because now everyone's expecting everything from this team. This team has now become a brute force in the AFC. This is a team that we expect now to beat the Titans. They beat the Chiefs twice. This is a team that is legitimately going to be one of the great forces in the AFC to come from years down the road. And just imagine saying that last season after what we saw the Bengals kind of go through a very, very rough season with injuries, a season where we were really worried that this is a team that's going to have to rebuild again, that's going to have to find new pieces and let other guys go. Of course, losing AJ Green, losing Carlos Dunlap, losing Geno Adkins. It felt like this rebuild was just continuing on. It was going to be going on and on and on until finally we figure out something. But they hit on all their picks. Their defensive coordinators and offensive coordinators this year, Brian Callahan and Lou Anarumo, have been fantastic. I wish there was coordinator awards, because I really would put Lou Anarumo at the top of that list as well. They have really flipped around and have done fantastic this year. But Zach Taylor has just been in the center of all of this. He's making sure everything's working out. Everyone's clicking at the exact right time. Whenever they need a turnover, they get a turnover. Whenever they need points, they get points. Joe Burrow is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL now. Jamar Chase is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. The Bengals have one of the, I would say, most impactful defenses right now in the NFL when it comes to making big plays. That's what a great coach does. A great coach makes it to where big teams happen to make big plays. And not to mention, this is also the least penalized team in the NFL. This is a team that is very, very disciplined. They know what they're doing, and on top of that, they are young. So for the fact that Zach Taylor has everyone buying in together, they're not committing penalties, they're doing what needs to be done to win each game, I don't think it's really a competition at this point. Zach Taylor should be the coach of the year.
I don't even know where to begin, talking about Taylor. Let's go ahead and get this out of the way. Everybody knows I was not a fan of Taylor first 2 years. And I did last year. There were times I wanted him fired. But I did say I want to be wrong so bad. I'm so freaking glad I was wrong. And it's so crazy because when you head into this season, Zach Taylor was arguably the number one coach in the hot seat, heading into this year. And, you look at the Chicago Bears game, the second game of the season. that we lose that game and Taylor's number one in the hot seat. A couple weeks later, we're down 20-0 against the Jaguars. If we lose that game, just say, possibly what if Taylor got fired after that game? But it's so crazy, his turnaround last season to this year. And when you look at the pretty much the biggest win last year, obviously, was a Monday night game against the Steelers. And we had no expectations in that game. We thought we were going to get killed. I thought we were going to lose by like 30 plus. And it felt like when we beat the Steelers last year on Monday Night Football, a team we have not beat at that time for 5 years, it felt like that was like our Super Bowl win, because during that time to 2016 or 2020, we sucked. We were one of the worst franchises in the NFL. We could never win a big game. We could never even go to the postseason. We were never over 500 during that span. And now look at 1 year later, instead of, beating a team, oh, well, that's our Super Bowl. We are literally in the Super Bowl. And, having 4 wins last season, if the Bengals beat the Rams in the Super Bowl to have their first Super Bowl win in franchise history, that'll make it 4 wins in the postseason this year, when we had 4 wins total of last year. And you talked about, the Bengals had no expectations. Yesterday, I was doing a video with somebody, and we talked about on the AFC North preview on ESPN, who's going to win the AFC North. The Bengals were not even mentioned one single time heading into this year. And we won the AFC North. We won our first playoff game in over 30 years, won our first road postseason game ever in franchise history. We go to the Super Bowl for the first time in over 30 years when we had no expectations. If you were to tell me that we were going to sweep the Steelers, Ravens, and Chiefs, that is insane this year. Like, nobody would have expected that to happen. Steelers, I did think was really likely to happen, but the Ravens, who in my opinion, the Ravens and Browns were, pretty much the top teams in the AFC North heading into this year. And when you look at the division we're playing in, I would say most fans who are favorite team is in the AFC North would agree the AFC North is probably the best division in the NFL. And you look at these, teams like the Ravens and Browns who are not in the playoffs. It's not because they're bad. It's because the AFC North is just so good and they're playing one another, and one team has to lose. So no expectation, hardest division in the NFL. At 4 wins last year to possibly 4 postseason wins this year, I mean, Taylor has to win Coach of the Year. It's not even debatable. If he doesn't win, it is absolutely rigged. But Taylor, Coach of the Year, I don't even know how somebody could even say that he's not Coach of the Year for this season.
I don't see there being a legitimate argument behind it. I mean, I do understand the success Michael LaFleur has had with Green Bay, with what Tyler Vrabel has done with Tennessee. That needs to be credited, because they both have very, very good seasons at head coach. But let's be honest, they did not flip a 4-12 team to a Super Bowl contender. I mean, that's just point blank. I mean, obvious. So unless I see one of them do something that impressive, I'm not going to consider it. I think Bill Belichick, again, had a great season considering all he's done. I do think there were great coaches out there, but the Bengals have been the most improved team in the NFL, and it all starts with coaching. I really do think coaching is the biggest reason behind that right now. We've seen Zach Taylor, Lou Anarumo, Brian Callahan fix all their schemes, make sure every player is comfortable and knows what they're doing. There's never any confusion on the field, ever. They know who to put the ball in the hands of during crunch time. This is a team that just knows how to win. And like I said, it all starts with coaching, and that's why they need to be credited. And hopefully Zach Taylor can win Coach of the Year.
When you look at the Bengals, this season, obviously the biggest surprise team in the NFL, and it's not even debatable. And there's so many players who kind of surprise people as well, when it comes to guys like Jamar Chase or Joe Burrow, or, just other non-Bengal players. And it's weird, talking about the NFL awards, but the more I'm looking at some of these awards, it's basically like the Bengal awards, because really a Bengal player or a Bengal coach, like people who are on the Bengals are going to win half these awards, or at least they should. So going to, let's see here, comeback player of the year, it's not even debatable. Burrow, what are your thoughts? Is there even a debate for this award?
Nick Bosa and Dak Prescott had each great seasons to come back from after having really bad struggles last year. I do think both should be in contention, maybe in the conversation for the award. But again, this is kind of the same conversation with Jamar Chase. It kind of felt like after the Ravens game where he threw for over 500 yards, after the Chiefs game where he threw for over 400 yards. And especially considering what he's done now in the postseason, it kind of feels like Burrow's ran away with it. Now, here's the thing. I know the NFL does not factor in postseason success to their awards, so I can understand maybe they, change their mind based off of that. But based off of what I saw from him at the end of the regular season as well, it still feels like this is Burrow's award to lose. Dak Prescott was a fine quarterback, but at the end of the day, he was not as effective nearly at the end of the season what Joe Burrow was. Joe Burrow won big games, with his arm, really kind of felt like the Cowboys had to rely a lot on their defense this year to win some big games. It just feels like this is, again, another Bengals award where Joe Burrow is the favorite because he came off of a brutal knee injury this year. I mean, an absolute terrible knee injury, turned around, is now considered a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. I think, at least. He's had a top 5 season at quarterback this year. And I mean, again, he needs to be credited. He needs to be awarded for it. He has been the leader of this team. Whenever I mentioned earlier, Zach Taylor knows who to put the ball in the hands of at the end of the games. Joe Burrow is that guy. He puts the ball in the hands of Joe Burrow, his quarterback, who knows exactly what he's doing at all times. And, at the end of a game, whenever Joe Burrow has the ball in his hands, something good's going to happen. We see a lot of Evan McPherson game winners because of that. He's such a great, smart player. And again, I do think he is probably easily the favorite for comeback player of the year.
It's so weird because when you look at, Burrow, his play this season, this is his first full season. Imagine what year 5 and year 6 are going to look like. I mean, it's so surreal and insane to think this is not even the best Joe Burrow that we're going to see as Bengal fans, and this is just his first full year. When you have no expectations and he's able to deliver us, a Super Bowl appearance against the Rams, despite having probably a top 3 worst offensive line in the NFL, you can make even the case, maybe even the worst offensive line in the NFL. And despite that, he's in, the MVP conversation. He's in the comeback player of the year conversation. He gives us our first postseason win in over 30 years. And it just shows how great of a quarterback Burrow is. And despite this being his first season, first full season, he's already, I would say, a top 5 quarterback in the league. I don't think it's biased at all to say he's a top 5 because, we talked about before the show, ever since that Pro Bowl snub, when he wasn't named a Pro Bowler, he's been the best quarterback in the league. I don't think it's even been remotely close, honestly. When you look at some of these other guys like, Rodgers, Brady, Mahomes, who are all, nowhere to be seen when it comes to Super Bowl weekend. So it's just surreal with Burrow's, play his rookie year, and his first full year, going to win comeback player of the year. And heading into this year, I picked Prescott to win it because I thought, top market team, it makes sense. NFL hates the Bengals. Bengal players do not win awards very often. But just when you look at, towards the end of the regular season, he really just, carried that comeback player of the year, cemented him why he should win it, going to be the a front runner. And I know the postseason doesn't really matter much when it comes to, some of these awards, but just his, plays in the postseason as well, getting out of these sacks against, Kansas City and, winning an Arrowhead down 18. It's really hard to argue that Joe Burrow shouldn't be, comeback player of the year.
He makes plays that not many other quarterbacks in the NFL can make. We're always so used to saying about Patrick Mahomes, but it's true for Burrow too. Burrow's made plays that there's not many quarterbacks in the NFL that can make those plays. And that's normally, in my eyes, a good indicator of how valuable a quarterback is whenever you see those plays being made. And he does it a lot. He makes a lot of plays. He has the highest completion percentage in the league this year. He's the only quarterback over 70% completion percentage in the NFL. He also leads the league in yards per attempt. So he is gaining the most yards per pass pass attempt throughout this season, which means, honestly, he's probably the most effective quarterback whenever throwing the ball in total this season. Whenever he's throwing the ball, the Bengals are most successful in general out of any team in the NFL. So I definitely think when you look at how effective he's been and how great he's been whenever he does throw the ball, he's accurate. He's throwing it deep. He's doing it short. He can go wherever he wants. This is a recipe for showing how fantastic Joe Burrow is. This is why he's deserving of the award. He can do quite literally everything at a very high effective rate.
When you look at some of these awards, like comeback player of the year, that's more likely, going to be a quarterback, whether, it's Burrow or, some way it's going to, if it would be Dak Prescott, both those guys being quarterbacks. You look at the NFL MVP, that's basically, a quarterback award. But, offensive player of the year is normally the best player who is not a quarterback. And it really seems to go that way. If a running back or a wide receiver has a phenomenal year, and if they don't win MVP, 9 times out of 10, they're going to end up winning Offensive Player of the Year. So who is your Offensive Player of the Year award winner?
I'm actually going to go with another quarterback this time around. I do really think there have been 2 great quarterbacks this season, both on the NFC side, that have really kind of separated themselves from the majority of the pack, at least this year. My MVP is going to be the other one. So I'm going to go with the first guy, and it's Tom Brady. I think Tom Brady had a fantastic season this year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He was a very, very effective quarterback, led the league in passing yards, of course. and was in general just just a great quarterback. It is insane to think that this guy is retiring this year after winning Offensive Player of the Year, but he was, again, a very, very elite quarterback. He led this team to a very successful season. And again, this is a regular season award. This is basically based off of what he does in the regular season, and what he did during the regular season was phenomenal. Had a very rough into the season, of course, in the playoffs, did not look very good in the playoffs at all, but throughout the season, he was a fantastic quarterback. He got the ball to all of his receivers, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown. He got the ball to all of them at a very, very high level. Rob Gronkowski was a very effective receiver as well. And this is a team that, again, was a brute force in the NFC. They were hard to beat at all because of how elite Tom Brady was. He led him on a lot of game-winning drives. He was just a great quarterback in general. And again, he leads in most of the stats and passing stats this year. So I do think he's very deserving of the award Offensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, that's an interesting pick there. I would probably have to disagree with that, because to me, when you look out throughout this regular season, there was lots of hype at times with Jonathan Taylor, being in the MVP, conversation. If he's even remotely in the MVP conversation, why were the Colts not in the playoffs? Like that's kind of my argument for that. But to me, it's really crazy. We talked about, it was August, and that's when we kind of did our awards heading into the season. And we both agreed that the Rams were one of the best teams heading into the year. Matthew Stafford was going to have a phenomenal year. And we both agreed that probably the most underrated wide receiver duo in the NFL was Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. And the way Cooper Kupp has played this season has absolutely been phenomenal. He's basically won the Triple Crown for a wide receiver: most receptions, most receiving yards, and most touchdowns for a receiver this year. And when you look at the Rams' record, when Cooper Kupp has 100 yards or more, they are pretty much nearly, unbeatable. And to me, I feel like Cooper Kupp deserves somewhat a say in the MVP conversation. But obviously, a wide receiver is not going to win, the MVP this year when you look at a guy like Joe Burrow, in the conversation. And especially because a wide receiver has never won the MVP award, which to me, when I read that, was kind of shocking. But I feel like the way Cooper Kupp has played this season, it's really hard for me to not give him some type of award. So I would probably say Cooper Kupp would be my offensive player of the year.
Cooper Kupp's definitely the next most deserving of the award, at least in my books. I mean, this is a guy that's absolutely dominated this season, and it's, of course, in the Super Bowl because of it. He's been a brute force throughout the season in general. I mean, whenever the Rams need a big play, Cooper Kupp's their target. He is their main guy, and he has been fantastic at everything he does. A very, very good route runner, is not particularly athletic in any way, but knows what to do, whenever the game's on the line. So, I mean, I do really think he excels at just being a fantastic route runner. He's a very, very sure hands for a receiver, and he's a very, very reliable guy who can get down the field at a very, very good pace and score. I do think Cooper Kupp's got very underrated speed, even though he's not the biggest guy out there. And I do really think in general he is just a very, very solid receiver at everything he does. So I definitely think he's another very deserving player of this award. I just really think as well Tom Brady has to be credited for what he's done, and I do think they're going to send him off with an award.
Yeah, I would not be shocked at all if Brady were to win Offensive Player of the Year or MVP. I would be really tipped off if he won MVP, because I feel like Burrow has been more deserving this year. But, when you look at Offensive Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year, this is one of the very, very few awards the Bengal player, in my opinion, will not end up winning. So, we talked about Offensive Player of the Year. So who would you say would be your Defensive Player of the Year?
Yeah, so I'm giving that award to T.J. Watt and what he's done this season. I think he's been a very, very effective edge rusher, and I believe he was my pick to win last year or at the beginning of this year as well. T.J. Watt has been just flat out phenomenal this season. I mean, he has really carried this Pittsburgh team that has absolutely no offense whatsoever. And it's crazy because this is a team that still made the playoffs somehow this season. I really think that was on the backs of T.J. Watt. It seems like every single time Pittsburgh needs a big play, he's making it. Whenever it's the Geno Smith fumble, if it's a pick six against the Chiefs. I mean, this is a guy that is going out there and making big play after big play after big play, and he plays on defense, which is insane to imagine, how effective he has been despite playing on the defensive side of the ball. So I really, really do think TJ Watt has been a game wrecker. He leads the league in sacks, of course. He, I believe, is up there in pressures as well. Has a lot of forced fumbles, has a couple of interceptions, a couple of touchdowns this season. He really has everything you need to really just tell you that he is the best player on defense this year. So we'll give him that award.
I think heading into this year, I think I had Myles Garrett. I could be wrong. But, this kind of sucks. This is basically, most of them are Bengals, but then, a Steeler has to ruin it. And, there has to be an award I mean, where Steelers probably win it. And I mean, TJ Watt has been sensational this season. I know some people would argue Diggs. I don't even think that's really debatable. I know he's had so many picks, but when you look at how many yards Diggs is giving up this season, it is insanely bad. But TJ Watt, ties his sack record with Michael Strahan. And, he missed a couple games this year. Despite the regular season bumping up to 17 games instead of 16, I don't even think he would have played a full 16. I think he played like 15 games this year. And there were even times in those 15 games where he came out of the game and was out for the rest of the game. So the fact that, he was able to tie a sack record despite, not playing all the games, even missing in some of the games that he did play, was phenomenal. And when you look at the Steelers team, it's so weird when you look at a team and you look at a team like, wow, they're good. If it wasn't for the quarterback, they wouldn't be in the playoffs, for instance, But look at Joe Burrow and look at, a guy like Derek Carr. Derek Carr had one of the better seasons of his career. If it wasn't for him, the Raiders would not have been in the playoffs. But it's so weird saying that TJ Watt, a defensive player, if it was not for him, the Steelers would not be in the playoffs, which is something that is very, very, very rare to say about a guy who's on defense, to say if it wasn't for him, that team would not be remotely close to be playing in the postseason. It really shows how great TJ Watt is. It's so weird because when you talk about best players in the NFL, lots of people, talk about quarterbacks, maybe Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes. But despite being on defense, I think TJ Watt, has a case for not only being the best defensive player in the league, but possibly even being the best player in the entire league. So, TJ Watt winning Defensive Player of the Year, I really think that one is a easy pick. I don't see how anybody could really argue against that one.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of people make arguments for Micah Parsons, of course, the rookie from Dallas, who I think is also a very, very good player. Myles Garrett had a fantastic season this year as well. Your pick for the award. I think he probably will be the runner-up, but it just seems like TJ Watt's really just separated himself from everyone. Aaron Donald's also a very good name that I know everyone wants to bring up for Defensive Player of the Year. Even though his stats don't really show it, he still is one of the most impactful, I would argue, the most impactful defensive player in the league. But in terms of Defensive Player of the Year, I always just gauge that on who had the best season out of everyone. And I really do think, for the most part, it's a stats award for defense based off what you've done, statistically. And statistically, it's pretty clear TJ Watt has impacted the game more than any other player on defense this year, and it really isn't that close.
An award that is very, very close and is certainly debatable, because when you start thinking about this award, you might talk to 4 different people, and all those people might have a different answer for this award. When you look at MVP, it's close. In my opinion, I don't think it's as close as people think. Who is your pick for the MVP this season?
I got to take Aaron Rodgers. I really think most valuable player in this league is Aaron Rodgers. Can you imagine what would happen to the Packers if Aaron Rodgers left this year and did not play for this team? They go from the best team in the NFL in the regular season to, quite literally, I think, one of the worst teams in the NFL. This is a guy that literally is single-handedly holding an entire franchise on his back. That's how good Aaron Rodgers is, and he has really been a dominant force this year. Again, near the top of everything. I think, just barely below Brady in passing yards. I want to say he's up there in touchdowns. He has a very, very good touchdown to interception ratio. Rarely ever makes mistakes. Very, very accurate quarterback. He knows when to get the ball out of his hands and get the ball to Davante Adams at a very high level. And this is a guy that still does not have a very good receiving core. Davante Adams is definitely probably the best receiver in the league, I would say, pretty easily. But outside of that, you have Allen Lazard, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Randall Cobb, who is very, very solid, but still, he's much older now. He's not nearly what he was at his prime. This is a guy that still has, a pretty poor wide receiver core, and nothing much outside of that. He has pretty good running backs in A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones, who are pretty effective. I like his tight ends, Bob Tonyan, whenever he was healthy, he got hurt later on this season, and Mercedes Lewis, who had a lot of pretty good games this year, but nothing too special. This is a guy that just really does not have a lot around them and is still making do with what he has, which is so impressive. They were without some of their 3 best players throughout this entire season. David Bakhtiari, the starting right tackle, one of the best tackles in the NFL, left tackle. He was gone for the majority of the season, so he had to go with that backup left tackle for a lot of this time. And they also had 2 of the best defensive players out, Jair Alexander and Zadarius Smith. That really wasn't a matter for Rodgers because he was putting up 40 points a game to win all these games. So at the end of the day, the defense didn't only had to hold them to a couple of stops, and that's all they needed to win the football game. So Aaron Rodgers is a very, very effective quarterback, and he is so dangerous at everything he does. And the moment he leaves the Packers are screwed, and that's why he's the most valuable player in the NFL right now.
You make an interesting point. If you take Rodgers off Green Bay, how sucky they would be. I mean, you look at the NFC North, I think it's one of the worst divisions in the NFL. But, if you take the Rodgers off that Green Bay team, they might, be the last team in the NFC North. And that really goes to show how valuable he is to Green Bay. But it's interesting when you think of the MVP. I was on a video last night talking about it. I hate that the MVP award is given before the Super Bowl. I think that's so stupid because to me, when you look at some of these players who I think deserve to be in MVP conversation, I know he's not going to win it, but the way Cooper Kupp has played this year, I think he at least needs some recognition for it. Joe Burrow, I think he's certainly in the conversation for MVP as well, playing in the Super Bowl. But with Aaron Rodgers, I know the MVP is not really an award that is given out to how good you are in the postseason. But to me, it's really hard to give Aaron Rodgers the MVP when Travis Kelce had more passing touchdowns in the postseason than Aaron Rodgers did. And I know Aaron Rodgers had a phenomenal regular season. I just don't – I can't give it to Rodgers because just how how crappy he played in the postseason. And I know postseason shouldn't matter, and it doesn't really matter when MVP. But then when you start thinking about Joe Burrow, it is so surreal and insane to think. Obviously the Bengals are in the Super Bowl this year, Joe Burrow's first full season. But when you look at the last 2 years, the Bengals have had 25 losses. That does not even seem real, when you look at this point where we are now. And, we were the worst team in the league in 2019, 2020. Look at those, 2-year stretch. We are horrendous. And Joe Burrow arguably has the worst offensive line in the NFL. No expectations, and we've already talked about it. Nobody gave us a chance to even be in the playoffs, let alone, end up winning the AFC North, winning a playoff game, winning the first, road postseason game and being in the Super Bowl. I know it's debatable. I'm not trying to be biased, but it's really hard for me not to pick Burrow just because everything is done the past month and a half, really ever since that, Pro Bowl snub when he didn't get in. But I know it's debatable, but I probably had to take Burrow over Rodgers.
Burrow's definitely had a fantastic season. And like I said, he is probably the most efficient quarterback in the league right now. So definitely needs to be credited for that. Rodgers had a lot more pass attempts than Joe Burrow. But, again, this is just a matter of, in general, how much do I think Aaron Rodgers impacted the Green Bay Packers? I just think that it is so great for us to even imagine. And I think we're figured out next year because I think he's gone from the Packers this year. I don't think he's going to be a Green Bay Packer anymore. It's a big conversation for later. But we'll see for sure how impactful he was for Green Bay after he leaves, because I definitely think it's going to be a huge change and a huge adjustment for Green Bay next year. But the fact alone that they were 13-4 with Aaron Rodgers and they're very likely to be 4-13 without him is just insane. And I do think Joe Burrow needs a lot of credit. He's a very, very impactful player on the Bengals as well. But I think unlike Aaron Rodgers, the Bengals are able to find success in other areas as well. They're able to have a very, very good run game. They have a very good receivers. They're good run after catch. They have a very solid defense as well. I do really think that the Packers are just way too rely on Aaron Rodgers in that passing game to win each game for them.
It's weird because all the awards we've talked about, like Coach of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year, Offensive Player, and Defensive Player of the Year. All those players we kind of have, and coach, we kind of have a general idea who's going to win it. Even Comeback Player of the Year, with Burrow. I really feel like the MVP, the most prestigious regular season award in the NFL, is the one that's really a toss-off and the question mark, which is weird because all the other ones kind of a general idea. And when you look, at the MVP and so some of these other awards, with the awards coming tomorrow on Thursday, obviously the Bengals have, the biggest game ever, in LA, against the Rams on Super Bowl 56. But, there was some interesting news, coming out last night that really shocked me. And that was, future Hall of Famer Rob Gronkowski announced if he would continue playing in the NFL, he would like to play with Joe Burrow. What are your thoughts on these remarks by Rob Gronkowski? And you think there's a possibility that Gronkowski could end up playing for the Bengals next season?
Yeah, whenever Tom Brady first announced his retirement, it kind of felt like we were just expecting, it was only a matter of time before Gronk was going to follow in his footsteps and retire as well. I think that's what most people were expecting, at least I was, because, Gronk's only on a 1-year deal this year. Tom Brady was able to swindle him into staying an extra year with him before he retired. It really kind of felt like, this was Rob Gronkowski's final year in the NFL if he was going to leave with Tom Brady. But, here we are. This seems like a guy that's still got some game left in him. He's still playing very well at tight end. I do think he's still one of the better tight ends in the NFL, even at the age of 33 right now. I do think he's a very, very effective tight end. And it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Joe Burrow is a very, very strong pull. He's a very swaggy quarterback. And honestly, I'm not and I want to clarify when I'm saying this, I'm not saying he's the next Tom Brady, but you want to look at a quarterback who's closest to Tom Brady in the NFL right now, I would say it's Joe Burrow. I think he's the swaggiest. He is one of the most effective. He's a fantastic. He knows exactly what he's doing. It makes sense that he would attract Gronk, who's a fantastic tight end, who knows that he can be fantastic with Joe Burrow at quarterback. It feels like this is just the start of something really special for Cincinnati. Joe Burrow is going to attract so many free agents, and I think Gronk's just the first of many right now. And if the Bengals so choose to use him, I really do think he can be an effective asset to the team. I do think they can figure out a way to use both him and Uzomah on the field at the same time. This is a team that likes to run a lot of two tight end sets. They love to block with Drew Sample, of course, but Drew Sample's not the best tight end in the NFL right now. If you have CJ Uzomah and Rob Gronkowski both in the field at the same time, both are very, very good blockers, very capable blockers, and both are very, very effective receiving tight ends. I really do think Gronk's a guy who can get down the field farther and be able to get receptions down the field, while Uzomah's a guy that can catch the ball over the middle. So these are two very different tight ends who can play at the same time and be very, very effective. I do think if the Bengals are able to somehow swindle Rob Gronkowski to the Cincinnati, that's just another asset to add to this already stacked offense.
And, this is basically the Joe Burrow effect. And you mentioned it when it was announced Brady was retired. It was, to me, it just felt like it was a matter of days before Rob Gronkowski announced that he was going to retire. Because, there was a time where Rob Gronkowski said the only quarterback he wants to play for was Tom Brady. I read that in an article just a week or two ago. And then we're hearing these crazy things that he said he would like to play with Joe Burrow, which would be so awesome to see him play in Cincinnati. And you look at our, offensive weapons. CJ Uzomah, he is a free agent, but if you get him back and you get Gronkowski, you're looking at, the best, tight end duo in the NFL, along with the best wide receiver trio in the NFL, top 5 quarterback and a top 10 running back. You could just slightly improve the offensive line a little bit. We could be right back around, in the AFC Championship game and Super Bowl next season. And it's crazy because the Joe Burrow effect, when you look at how many, free agents we've signed the past year or two. And before Joe Burrow, we were not a team, who's going to sign some of these big free agents. Trey Hendrickson, that was a major signing. DJ Reader, Von Bell, Mike Hilton, some of these other guys. At the time, it seemed like Trey Waynes was going to be a big signing. He's been one of the biggest robbers ever, just basically just taking money away from the Bengals. But when all these guys wanting to play with Joe Burrow, and you're really starting to see it now, a guy like Rob Gronkowski, who has already retired once from the NFL, but, would like to continue playing in the NFL by playing with Joe Burrow, who I agree what you said there. He's not Tom Brady, but he's the closest thing to it. That was basically, some people's comparisons for him, coming out of the draft. Obviously it's really kind of ludicrous to compare him to Tom Brady, the most, accomplished quarterback ever, best player of all time. But when you look at their style of play, they're very similar, and just their competitiveness to win. I feel like that's part of the reason why, Gronkowski would want to play with Burrow, and just how great he is. First full season leading us to the Super Bowl. It's just surreal knowing. 2 years ago, I was at the game when we played the Jets, and that was, Taylor's first win as a head coach when Dalton, broke some of the, franchise records. That was one of the lowest games in franchise history for attendance. And now, we're breaking records and attendance, in the postseason. We're in the Super Bowl. It's just crazy how a couple of years make. And, now, we are one of those teams the past couple of years, signing these big free agents where in years past, we are not used to that. And I feel like a big reason of that is because of Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow has the entire city of Cincinnati excited, and I really do think that is rubbing off on a lot of the players as well. This is a team that I think everyone believes that Cincinnati is a team that's going to be in contention for years to come. And I think Gronk wouldn't want to go to Cincinnati if he didn't believe that himself, which says all you need to know about where Cincinnati's heading and trajectory-wise. He knows that this is a team that is very capable of going to the Super Bowl several years. I really think Gronk thinks that Cincinnati can be a dynasty because of how great Joe Burrow and this team has been in general this season. So I do really think that there's a lot of potential to Cincinnati and their football team in the next couple of years, because I not only is Gronk going to want to join, you're going to have a lot of other star players who are going to be very interested in joining this team. And this is still a team that's top 3 in the NFL right now, or top 4 in the NFL right now in cap space. I believe it's top 3. And after you cut Trey Waynes, you'll probably be in even at 2 at this point. So not only are you in the Super Bowl right now, you also have 9 draft picks next season. You also have you'll have well over $60 million in cap space to use in free agency. This is a team that can go out and get stacked next year and have a super team if they so choose.
And, when you think of free agents, with some of the bigger free agents we've signed the past couple of years, and somebody else, when you think of Trey Hendrickson and Von Bell, and even Eli Apple, those guys coming from New Orleans. Who's to say maybe we kind of shot the NFL instead of another marquee free agent and signing Teron Armstead, really, beefing up our offensive line. I mean, getting Teron Armstead, Wes Gronkowski, and if we can retain Uzama and Bates, holy crap. Like, there is a reason why people say there is a chance we can become a dynasty, because when you look at after this year, Joe Burrow still has 3 years in his contract. T. Higgins has 2, Mixon and Boyd are locked up for a couple more seasons. Jamar Chase has 4 years on his contract. Logan Wilson has several years left. And these key guys who are on rookie deals, I know it might be an issue a couple of years from now trying to retain all these guys, but the fact that we are already in the Super Bowl in Joe Burrow's first full season and we still have these guys for several more years, it's really hard to say. I'm not trying to be cocky or biased, because it's really annoying when you have some of those fans who are always biased, but I know I've said it a couple of times, it's hard for me to say there's not something big to stopping the Bengals being the AFC Championship game or Super Bowl, because when you have these guys locked up for several years, we really could become a dynasty and kind of be what like some people consider the Chiefs have been like the last several seasons.
Yeah, without question. I mean, Joe Burrow does not make the highlight plays someone like Patrick Mahomes does. He doesn't have the insane arm or the crazy no-look passes, but I don't remember many plays this year where Joe Burrow just flat out made the wrong play. This is a guy that goes out there, always makes the right decisions at the right time. And just like how Tom Brady is, he's a game manager. He knows exactly what to do when. He knows how to pick apart a defense. And honestly, I think once he has an NFL offensive line, there's a very, very good chance he could be at the top of quarterback stats in almost every single category next year. I really do believe that. If he has protection, this is a guy that is unstoppable in general. He's already really hard to stop with a terrible offensive line. You give him Rob Gronkowski, Teron Armstead, and some other offensive linemen. Imagine what this guy's going to do. He is going to be unstoppable.
Talking about the offensive line, obviously that's going to be a position group that they desperately need to upgrade in offseason. And that's really a big topic when it comes to Super Bowl against the Rams in Super Bowl 56 on Sunday. So our offensive line, it's so weird because at times they have shown some promise, looking good. Other times they've just looked god awful. And, giving up 9 sacks against the Tennessee Titans, that's horrendous. But then giving up 1 sack against Kansas City, I feel like our offensive line played a little bit better that game. There were several times where Joe Burrow escaped a sack and maybe made the offensive line not look as bad because they didn't give up a sack. But, Aaron Donald, going up against this Bengals offensive line, on Sunday, what are some things, with the Super Bowl that you think the Bengals can do to prevent giving up some sacks against LA?
Well, for one, I do really think this is going to be a big game for Drew Sample and Samaje Perine, 2 primary pass blockers that usually help on the line this year for the most part. Drew Sample's been a big part in help chip blocking edges to help make room for either Isaiah Prince or Jonah Williams to have a better, one-on-one matchup with one of the edge rushers. And he's also been a guy that has been a fullback for this team whenever they run the ball. He's also been a very effective fullback. Not on top of that, Samaje Perine's been basically the go-to third down back this year and has almost primarily been a pass blocker whenever needed. If they need someone to chip block or just go one-on-one against the guy, they're usually the ones who rely on him to do it. So I really think those two are going to have a huge job in the Super Bowl to chip block and make sure that the guys off the edge, Von Miller, Leonard Floyd, who have combined for 16.5 sacks this season, are not effective in this game. Because I do think if you could stop the edge rushers from getting pressure on Burrow can roll out of the pocket if Aaron Donald gets pressure in the middle, and he can make a play outside of the hashes. So as long as you're able to take down the edge rushers and eliminate them from this game, I really do think Cincinnati can be very effective. Because let's be real, there's absolutely no stopping Aaron Donald. It's not going to happen. You're not going to stop Aaron Donald. He's going to get pressure on you. He's going to beat you over the middle. You just have to be ready to escape the pocket whenever he does. However, I do think it's possible that they can limit and potentially stop Von Miller and Leonard Floyd, 2 great edge rushers in the NFC. And if you can do that with Drew Sample, Samaje Perine, ideally you have a big game from Jonah Williams and Isaiah Prince, then Joe Burrow's going to be able to leave the pocket, go outside, make big plays to Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, whoever you need in the boundary, maybe Tyler Boyd over the middle. You can find success with those plays, I think, if you're able to give Burrow time to be able to escape the pocket.
And there's several things that I think need to happen for the Bengals to prevent giving sacks to the Rams. And I feel like a couple of things are, when you look at some of these screen passes to Chase, Boyd, or Higgins, they tend to work, and that's a play that's a very low risk of, being a sack. Something else I feel like I feel like isn't being talked about the past month and a half or so, really since the Bengals have got going and really haven't lost much. I guess you can call that, Brown's game a loss, even though none of our starters really played, is that Joe Mixon has been a lot more involved in the pass catching game than people realize. You look at Joe Mixon, his last 4 or 5 games, he's averaging about 5 catches a game. That's something we are not used to seeing from Joe Mixon at all. And I feel like that, it's a high percentage throw, and you're not likely to get sacked that play. And, I would kind of like to see, I know it's kind of one of those deals, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But I get kind of, I feel like P. Ryan, out of the 3 running backs we have, is the best blocker. But I would kind of like to see Chris Evans out there a little bit, because I feel like out of the 3, he's also the best pass catcher out of P. Ryan, Mixon, and Evans. I would kind of like to see him get involved a little bit in that pass catching game. And something else, I know this is really, obvious and self-explanatory, but I feel like we need to give the ball to Mixon, because when you look at Joe Mixon, when Joe Mixon rushes for 80 yards or more, the Bengals are 6-0. And I don't think that's a coincidence, because that's taking pressure off Joe Burrow. And I know Joe Burrow is great under pressure, but at the same time, you don't want him throwing 40 or 50 times a game like we saw last season and getting sacked so many times. That was a major reason why Joe Burrow was sacked so many times last season, and ultimately, had a season-ending injury against Washington. So to me, I feel like when you look at this team, there's times where we might run the ball, might fixate on running, kind of like on our first downs when we played against Kansas City. But other times it feels like we're kind of more fixating on passing with Burrow a ton. I don't feel like we need to be completely one-sided. I feel like if we're balanced and if we can just, run with Mixon 3, 4, 5 yards here and there, and Burrow can beat Burrow, I feel like, that can really prevent us giving some sacks to LA, and that would increase our chances of winning the Super Bowl drastically.
The good news for the Bengals is this is a team in the Rams that are not very blitz heavy at all. It's a team that likes to rush 4 almost the entire game, and they really like to rely on their corners and safeties to lock you down the field. If Mixon's able to get past the line of scrimmage, basically, he's going to be one-on-one against a linebacker. And if he can beat that linebacker, you can get down the field in the secondary level and be able to get, 8+ yards a run. So this is a game that Mixon could really dominate if he's able to find a way to get past Aaron Donald consistently each play, because, again, this is a team that, unlike the Chiefs are a very blitz-heavy team. They were crashing down the middle whenever Mixon was running the ball. That's not a game Mixon's going to be very effective at. He has to bounce the ball on the outside to be successful there. Against the Rams, this is the guy where Mixon can run the ball down the middle and be very effective at it. So if they're able to set the tone of this game, let Mixon have the ball, and like you said, run for 80+ yards, this is a game that they will win if that happens.
It's so weird, saying, just a couple of days from now, the Bengals might be Super Bowl champions. It's something like you've expected next year. I've said so many times in my videos, I really expected next year to be our year that we could actually contend in the AFC and the NFL in general. And the fact that we are 1 year ahead of schedule being in the Super Bowl is just, mind-boggling and insane. We've been talking about, the Super Bowl matchup a little bit. We're talking about NFL awards. If you're just now tuning in, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. I would really, really appreciate it. Something here, we've been talking about, how the Bengals can prevent giving sacks. There's a couple of, really interesting key matchups in the game between the Bengals and the Rams. So what are some key matchups you really look forward to in Super Bowl 56?
I think what we're going to see is a headliner, and the most important matchup in this game is going to be Jamar Chase versus Jalen Ramsey. This will be the first time since the Chiefs game that we're going to see Jamar Chase one-on-one with another cornerback. Think about that. Last time that happened, Jamar Chase put up over 250 yards receiving. But at the same time, this is not Charvarius Ward. This is Jalen Ramsey, one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. It's going to be a huge matchup, because if the Rams are able to stop if the Rams are able to stop Jamar Chase one-on-one, it's going to be tough, because they're going to have other corners on the other side paying attention to T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. We're going to have to see Joe Burrow find other targets outside of those guys to be effective. If they're able to take Jamar Chase out of the game one-on-one, that's basically going to take T. Higgins out of the game too, since he's going to be doubled the entire game. So if you're not able to have Chase be effective, that's going to be a very, very dangerous scene for Cincinnati. I do think, though, we're starting to see this league slowly become a wide receiver-heavy league where the wide receivers are winning a lot of these matchups. And I think even though Ramsey's very, very effective, I still think Jamar Chase has a very good chance of winning this matchup and being able to be effective and force almost the Rams to play a safety down to his side. Jamar Chase can beat Jalen Ramsey deep. He's got the speed to do it. And I really think if he's able to do it once or twice this game, if he's able to get a couple of deep balls, this is a game, again, I think that they could really, really win. Another matchup I do want to mention, I do think it's a very, very important matchup as well. I'm really, really interested in seeing what this pass rush can do to the outside tackles of Rob Havenstein and Andrew Whitworth, two guys that are very, very good at the position. If Matthew Stafford has time in the pocket, he's going to dominate. That is just a fact. But against the pressure, Matthew Stafford is one of the poorer quarterbacks in the NFL. He's not a guy that can do very good under the pressure. He doesn't have many safety blankets. Tight end Tyler Higbee might not play this game. He really doesn't have any truly effective pass catching running backs either. It really is Cooper Kupp, OBJ, Van Jefferson, and the rest. That is really the primary guys what he's looking for. Matthew Stafford lives off of the intermediate deep parts of the game, and if he's not able to do that, if they're able to have pressure from Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson, then it's going to be a really, really tough game for Matthew Stafford. So I do really think it's another very key matchup that I'm keeping an eye on.
That's a matchup that I don't really think about. I don't think is being talked about enough. Is Whitworth and Havenstein against a guy like Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson has been sensational this year. Been one of the best signings I would say in Bengals franchise history. Been absolutely phenomenal. Sam Hubbard, a guy who's normally known for run stoppage, has got quite a few sacks this year. And you mentioned Matthew Stafford when he has no pressure. Matthew Stafford this year, when he has no pressure, has had over 30 touchdowns and just 3 interceptions. Not many interceptions at all. But when Matthew Stafford is being pressured, his completion percentage is 53. His quarterback rating is 62. When he isn't pressured, his completion percentage is 71. His quarterback rating is 114. So, there's a sensational difference and a major difference between those two. And when you look at Matthew Stafford, you have to get him pressure so much, because when you look at our defense, we had 4 sacks against Patrick Mahomes in the second half of that Chiefs game. Matthew Stafford is one of the very few strict pocket passers left in the NFL. He is not a guy who's going to escape sacks like Patrick Mahomes. And when you look at the times we have faced pocket passers this season, we've really been able to get sacks quite a few times. Look at the Steelers. The first meeting, we sacked Roethlisberger. It seemed like more than we ever have against the Steelers. Our first meeting, look at a guy like Kirk Cousins. First game of the season, a guy who's not known to be mobile at all or run. We would have sacked him, several times, 4 or 5 times that game. So I feel like that is a major one there. And obviously Jalen Ramsey and Chase, that is a marquee matchup. That's going to be insane to watch those two guys. But I feel like something else. Everybody's talking about Jamar Chase and Jalen Ramsey. What about their corners against, T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd? Okay, even if Ramsey stops Chase, we still have Boyd and Higgins, 2 very good and 2 very underrated wide receivers. And it's like they have Jalen Ramsey, but they don't have a sensational corner. Even if you take Jamar Chase out of the equation, we still have 2, great wide receivers who can step up when they need to. When the Bengals, when Tyler Boyd has a touchdown, we are 5-1. I don't think that's a coincidence, because when we spread the ball around, that's when we are at our best. Jamar Chase might have 150 yards or 200 yards, and we might win. But when Chase has 80, Boyd has 70, Higgins has 100, Uzama gets some catches then and there. That's when we're our best, because that's when you can't stop us. When CJ Uzama has 35 yards or more this season, we are 6-1. That is another time where I don't think it's a coincidence, because I just don't think when you give us, when everybody gets the ball, we are unstoppable. Even if you take Chase to the equation, I really feel like some of these other guys can step up, because the Rams have some phenomenal players in the defensive line and Ramsey, but they don't have, some of those other corners who I don't think they can stop guys like T. Higgins and Boyd. So I really feel like those are very some interesting matchups.
I will say, outside of Jalen Ramsey, this is a very weak secondary the Rams have. They are very, very liable to be exposed. It's a safety group that's okay, but not anything great. Eric Weddle just came out of retirement to help the safety group out. If that's what you like, if that's an indicator of how much they need help there. And he's really been probably their best safety this year so far, even after coming out of retirement, which is insane. But outside of that, they don't really have a very reliable cornerback too. It's Darius Williams. He'll go one-on-one T. Higgins. T. Higgins has a 8-inch advantage on him in terms of height. So this is a guy that can easily out-tower him and play over him. They're going to have to double T. Higgins or find someone else to put on T. Higgins if they're going to want to stop him one-on-one as well. I lean towards them. They're probably going to have to double him, have a safety over on his side if they're hoping to clamp Jamar Chase one-on-one with Ramsey. So that'll be another big area to watch. So I do think it's going to be a very, very key matchup. And also, I was just thinking about this just now. This really feels like the game that Tyler Boyd can just break out in. It really feels like everyone talks so highly highly of Tyler Boyd. He's such a good receiver. We all know it. We're big Bengals fans. We know how good of a receiver Tyler Boyd is. We know how capable he is as well. It really feels like if they're going to pay this much attention to T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, it's going to give Boyd a chance to get over the middle and get some big yards. And we know how capable Boyd is of having great breakout games. We've seen it so many times throughout his career. So I really do think this could be a game where Tyler Boyd is a breakout game and he becomes the top receiver of this team. And all of a sudden, all the Rams game plan falls apart because they can't stop everyone.
And, when you look at Tyler Boyd, year after year after year, he proves why he's one of the most underrated receivers in the NFL. And when you look at Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd, I know pretty much everybody would say that Jamar Chase would be the best of those three, which, would be certainly true. But I feel like out of those three, I feel like Tyler Boyd is the most reliable. If you need a crucial 3rd and 5, he's not going to be a guy who drops the ball. He's going to have a great play when you need him to step up. And that's why it's so great about him because, he's been phenomenal for us. And he's been through the bad years, in 2019 and before, T. Higgins joined us and before Jamar Chase joined us. And I really feel like Tyler Boyd has I agree what you said there. Tyler Boyd has a game or an opportunity where he has a time to, play amazing in the Super Bowl against the Rams. Everybody's talking about Chase. And it's so weird because when you talk about Jamar Chase, if you notice in some of these, latest playoff games, everybody's talking about Chase, but that's when T. Higgins, plays great. That's when Tyler Boyd plays great. If you stop Chase, you still don't necessarily have the good corners and the good secondary to stop these other guys. And that's why I think the Bengals have such a good chance to win Super Bowl 56, which is just a sentence I did not think I was going to say heading into this year. It's just so crazy. So it's Super Bowl 56 between the Bengals and the Rams in the Rams Stadium, SoFi Stadium. What is your score prediction between the Bengals and the Rams?
So excited to watch this game. I really, really think it's going to be an instant classic. I think it's going to be super fun. I think it's going to be super close as well. I think it's going to come down to the final game. We've already seen 3 Evan McPherson game-winning field goals this year. I think it's only right. I predict 1 more for the Bengals. I'm taking Cincinnati to win this game 27-24 and an Evan McPherson game winner.
Well, you literally stole my everything, what I was about to say. I said it on yesterday's video, 27-24. It's the storybook ending with the Bengals. They cap it off. McPherson game-winning field goal. But you already kind of said that. But it's weird. I've talked to somebody. We had the same score prediction, and we ended up winning against the Chiefs. Hopefully, I could care less if we're right, as long as the Bengals end up winning. That's the main thing. But I don't know why. I just feel like McPherson's going to get a game-winning field goal. That is just
it has to.
Exactly. It has to happen. How the season has gone this year, how many times he has helped us to end the game. It just feels right that he gets the game in the field goal as time expires or something like that. And to give the Bengals their first Super Bowl win ever is just so weird. I feel I'm emotional just talking about it right now. But on this video, we kind of talked about, the NFL awards, our picks for the NFL awards that is tomorrow night. We kind of talked about, Rob Gronkowski, his remarks and, talking about, how he would like to play with Joe Burrow. We also kind of, previewed the Super Bowl a little bit, how the Bengals can prevent giving up sacks against the Rams, some key matchups and our score predictions. So, Blake, can you kind of tell some of the listeners when I follow you on social media?
Yeah, follow me on my Instagram at StripeHype. Cincy update all the time on Bengals news and everything like that. I'll also go follow my scouting page now. I'm doing a lot of NFL draft scouting. Even during this fantastic time as a Bengals fan, I'm still trying to scout. So go follow me there at StripeHype Scouting as well. And go follow me on Twitter at BlakeJude714, where I cover pretty much both the Bengals and scouting stuff. It's kind of been what I've been doing down there and as a whole. So thank you so much for having me on. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll definitely put the links in the description below so people can check out your content. Make sure to follow me, the Sports Dude Hines Show on Instagram, Dude Hines Show on Twitter. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. Thank you all so much for listening, and I will see you all next time on the Sports Dude Hines